Welcome back to Real-ationship Goals, a podcast all about exploring the realities and complexities of healthy relationships. Real-ationship Goals is a project of the Prevention and Education team at the Advocacy Center for Crime Victims and Children in Waco, Texas. If you or someone you know has experienced sexual violence or harassment and is seeking support services or needs more information, links to resources and our hotline number can be found in the description. The views expressed in this podcast are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect those of their organizations or affiliates.
Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Real-ationship Goals. We are your hosts. My name is Monica. I use they, she pronouns.
My name is Meryl and I use she, her pronouns.
And we are back with this is a special topics episode, and the topic today is Trans Day of Remembrance. And so I have a person to cover, and then you have
I have a monitoring project that I'm going to discuss.
Yeah, and so Meryl, please go ahead while I get this knot out of my hair.
Yeah, so I chose the Trans Murder Monitoring Project, which sounds super dark and heavy, but the Trans Day of Remembrance is a day to remember the trans people we have lost in the previous year. And so the Trans Murder Monitoring Project, it's a project that was founded in 2008, and it tracks the trans and gender nonconforming or gender diverse murders throughout the world. I'm going to be reading my thing, so ignore me. But so one of the things it covers is that clearly, as most of us know already, transphobia puts trans people at a higher risk of violence. And there are people within the trans community that also disproportionately are affected by murder and violent crimes. We have trans women and femmes, black and brown trans people, trans sex workers, and trans migrants and refugees. And the list, so it's not like a January 1st to December sort of list. It comes out right before the Trans Day of Remembrance. And so the previous years was October 1st, 2023 to September 30th, 2024. And there were 350 trans people who were murdered around the world. And that number is likely a vast undercount due to misgendering, misreporting, underreporting. And so so it's likely a lot more than 350, but that is the confirmed amount of people that we have. And Latin America and the Caribbean actually make up 70% of the reported deaths, which might make it sound like there's a lot more violence in those countries towards trans people, but in reality, a huge part of that is because they have really well-established monitoring systems that keep track of those types of deaths, and not a lot of countries have those. So that is part of why we see such a higher percentage in Latin American and Caribbean countries. Some other stats are out of the 350 people that were murdered in the last year, so this would be the 2023 to 2024 because our current years haven't come out yet. 93% were black or brown. 94% were trans women or trans feminine people, and sex workers were the most targeted of any occupation population. So we can see that there are clearly demographics of people who are much more impacted by this violence. And that's pretty much what I have.
Well, I was going to say two things. One, I'm glad that I want to make the distinction between, because you talked about what Trans Day of Remembrance is, because I think sometimes people are like, what, didn't that just pass in March? But is it March or May?
I don't remember.
But that is the Trans Day of Visibility. So I'm glad that you brought up that so I could talk about the difference. And another thing that I'm glad that you brought up was talking about why Latin America and the Caribbean might have higher rates because, well, being someone who has family in Mexico, and like I've always heard growing up, like it can be dangerous for women because of the femicide. I feel like so often that's the only thing that people focus on, and like put these narratives that these countries are violent. I think all countries can be violent.
Absolutely.
But I think that just speaks to the story behind the data. So I just wanted to say that. But I am surprised that it happened in 2008.
That it started all the way back then?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Well, I wish, I feel like, yes, it started back then, but I feel like it would have been sooner, too.
Yeah.
I don't know how to describe it. Anyways, but data is interesting, but that is really tragic data.
It really, really is. And what really got me is I obviously knew that there would be a much higher proportion of trans women and black and brown people represented, but 93 and 94% really shook me. Like that is a huge difference, and it just really goes to show, like in the queer community, we talk about it, like our trans women and how vulnerable they are, but like seeing this data, it's like, wow,
Do you know,
that is bananas.
With you looking into that, do you know, like, I guess, like, who's in charge of the monitoring? Is it like a community effort?
I don't know the details, but I do know that this trans murder monitoring project, they get their numbers from independent sources. I don't know exactly what those would be in every country, so that's why it's different. So in a country that doesn't have as well-established monitoring systems, or if it's a country that would misgender more often, and so it's not going to be accurately described in the case report. But yeah, so they get them from the individual countries.
It makes me, I think my policy mind is going, because I'm like, who's doing it, who's like in charge of implementation, where's funding coming from, yada yada yada.
Yeah.
So that's all my thoughts. Okay. So I am actually covering a person who goes by Miss Major. She also just recently passed, maybe at the time of this recording, like a week or two ago. And so I really have her bio here, and I have a lot highlighted. But I have a lot highlighted, I'm going to talk about a lot, but there is a article that I'm going to mention at the end from a different source that has way more. That was like, I want to sit down and actually read this because it's really, really long, and it goes into more detail. So Miss Major, born Major Griffin-Gracy, but was known as Miss Major, was born in the 1940s. In her bio, she states that she doesn't know what year she was born, and she actually doubts official records because her official records listed October 25th, 1946, but they just say like 1940s. It even, like on here it says like 1940s question mark, and this is the Encyclopedia of Arkansas, which is where she was from. Am I lying? She was born in Chicago, but I think went back later in her life to Arkansas, which I'll get to. So yes, was born in Chicago. In the bio it's talking about her family, which I didn't really highlight because I really wanted to highlight her. But they were it says black middle class of Chicago's South Side. Miss Major actually graduated early and went to college at the age of 16.
Wow.
Yeah, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, but she was quickly dismissed because her roommate had discovered really feminine clothing, and she was actually like kicked out of college.
That's horrible.
And when I was reading the other article that I was kind of talking about earlier, I think she had came out to her family really young. I think I saw something like 12 to like 14, around that age. And like that article talked about how she would go into her mom's closet and things of that sort. But it was in college that she got kicked out. And then she returned to Chicago. Said they stole a vehicle with a friend and attempted to flee, and they were speeding out of town, and that was the first time she got arrested, and she spent 6 months incarcerated in a psychiatric facility because that was a common sentence for gender nonconforming people. And so kind of around her release, she actually moved to New York City and became a big part of ballroom, which was, it's described here as Black and Latino drag and queer club scene. I love ballroom. That's a whole nother story though. I think that history is just so beautiful and rich. And then also it talks about during this time she was actually also engaging in sex work, and she was arrested and jailed so many times throughout the 1960s. And because she was arrested so many times, the Stonewall riots actually was just like another night to her. And that's how it was described here. And then during the longer imprisonment in Deanna, I think that's how you say it, in New York, Miss Major actually met someone called Frank Big Black Smith, and he was organizing around Black liberation politics, community care, and the abolition of the prison industrial complex. And like she really emphasized, like, this is what politicized her, this introduction of this relationship. And
So sorry.
no, go ahead. My girl's struggling. Anyways, but on here it's talking about how this relationship really informed the rest of her life as a community organizer. And then it briefly talks about, like, after she was released, went back to New York City, met Deborah Brown, had a son named Christopher, and then...
I'm so sorry.
No, you're okay. And they were co-parenting. And then Miss Major's release from prison also happened to have happened with the beginning of the HIV and AIDS epidemic.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
Obviously.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, you're okay. And so she was in New York, and then after moving to San Diego, she actually started working in this realm of work and started going to like
Sex work?
No, with AIDS and HIV.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so like was working in this realm, and something that I thought was so cool, because I love harm reduction, was around this time she was also operating the first like needle swap.
Oh, that's awesome.
In the Bay Area. I feel so bad because I'm like, you're coughing and you're like, great.
I'm so sorry.
No, you're okay.
I
just
got
want
a
to
sinus infection.
Yeah,
so.
my girl got a sinus infection. I was like, I'm not over here ignoring you, I promise.
No.
And then it says in 2003, Miss Major had joined the Transgender Gender Variant and Intersex Justice Project, which was like the only organization in the United States dedicated to assisting transgender people in prisons. And she was the executive director from 2009 to 2015.
Wow.
It's a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2015, there is a documentary about her life called Major, with an exclamation mark. I said like this, like a plus. That's not an exclamation mark.
I was so confused.
She had seen a screening about that, and it's about her life in Little Rock, and she had decided to move to the city, saying that she enjoyed the openness of the city and wanted to support Black trans women there.
In Little Rock?
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
And so that's where I was getting the Arkansas from. And so yeah, she lived there with her longtime partner, Beck Witt Major. Beck gave birth to their child, Isaiah. I hope I said that right. And then Miss Major also maintained the operations of House of Gigi, which was known as Griffin-Gracy Educational and Historic Center. And this was a center to like really create a safe space for transgender women of color, so they can heal physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And just also, I think I was reading, they also really focus on leadership development for trans leaders in the South.
Okay.
And then it's kind of like getting a little bit, like the bio right here is getting shorter and shorter, and it's just talking about in May of 2023, that's when her book was released, and it's Miss Major Speaks, Conversations with a Black Trans Revolutionary, and it's just a memoir of interviews with her by a journalist who was also her friend and former assistant. And then October 1st of this year, Them magazine, who also wrote the article I'm going to talk about, had reported that Miss Major had been like hospitalized with sepsis and a blood clot, and then like the following week, they had posted that she was in hospice care, and then she died October 13th of this year, which is 2025. And I mean, like, mind you, this is like a really condensed bio, and the article that I was talking about earlier, it's by Them magazine, and it's titled Miss Major Griffin-Gracy, Stonewall veteran and legendary trans activist has died at 78. And it's just like such a long article, but it goes into so much depth, and there's so many quotes, and I don't know, I just thought it was so beautiful. Even just talking about this, like, even though it's really condensed. Miss Major is one of our elders, and we've been losing a lot of elders. And I think knowing queer history as queer people is really important, but also, like, we can learn so much from queer history, like community care.
Yes.
And so, I don't know, like, genuinely when I saw her book, I was like, wow, I really want to read this. And I just feel so bad that I am, like, she passed, and now I'm like, no, I for real need to read it. But
Right. I love that you brought up the community care aspect. And maybe it's a bigger city thing as well, because in bigger cities, obviously there's more set up for community care. But like I'm thinking about here in Waco and just like how much we need real community care.
Yeah.
And it really does start with people like Miss Major who care.
Yeah.
And then they spread that.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, I know, like, on here, it's really highlighting, like, her time as an executive director, and she managed these operations, but she did things before that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm sure she took care of people while she was in ballroom, in the ballroom scene, and even, like, having other sex workers' backs, and all these different things, like...
Well, even during the AIDS epidemic, like, the amount of community care that was necessary for these communities to make it through, like, an immense amount of community care.
Yeah. So I just wanted to highlight her, especially since she just recently passed. But yeah, and I feel like she's just, not in a way to belittle her and all her work, but like she's just a sliver of all the like queer history that we can learn about.
There really is so much.
Yeah.
I don't know nearly as much as I should.
Yeah.
I feel like there's always just too much to learn in this world.
And realistically, I think something that's beautiful, like, and I think it's really important talking about her book and her documentary, sometimes those stories are lost.
Yeah.
For different reasons, like, I'm thinking about maybe different sex workers who maybe can't have that visibility out of safety and yada yada, and maybe they just don't have the support systems and all these different things, like, anyways, just a really, really beautiful
Well, and it just makes me think of like how easy it would have been for the system to suck her up and just like make her into, you know, someone we've never heard of. And not to say people we've never heard of are like less than. But she had to overcome so much to even like survive, let alone to accomplish as much as she did.
Well, that's everything that we have for today's episode. Thank y'all for tuning in. And of course, before we go, we do have our relationship goal with Meryl. Go ahead.
So my relationship goal is to just surround yourself with more queer people, but to make sure that it's done with intention and not to tokenize them.
Yeah, and I was going to add to it by saying y'all should also consume more queer content with intention. And I'm like, is this my recommendation? But I love Gaydar. Gaydar is so fun, and with Ananias as the host. But actually, my recommendation was going to be Major, which was the life documentary for Miss Major, and also her book that I mentioned. Like I said, I'm sad that this, like, now the time that I'm getting to them, but I think it's important regardless if she was alive or not to keep that history going. But yeah, that's all we have for you today. If you want to follow us, you can follow us at Advocacy Waco on Facebook and Instagram. And then if you want prevention-specific content, you can follow us on Instagram at ACCVC_prevention. Bye, y'all.
Thanks so much for tuning in to Real-ationship Goals. This episode was produced by the Prevention and Education Department of the Advocacy Center for Crime Victims and Children in Waco, Texas. Interested in more content from P&E or the Advocacy Center? You You can follow us on Instagram at ACCVC_prevention or on Instagram and Facebook at Advocacy Waco. Be sure to like this episode and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time. Bye.